Hi everyone! Welcome to week 2 of English 102 online for the spring 2021 semester. I hope that you get a chance to read over other people's introductions in our Microsoft Teams, because those people are going to be some of your group mates here in a little bit. I just wanted to send you all our weekly update for week 2 in the course, and I'm going to go over the assignments we have for this week, some tips and tricks, and a little bit of preparing for next week. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. A couple things for this week. The second discussion board is going to be due on Friday, your initial post, and then responding to 2 classmates by Sunday. The discussion board is about using search terms, and it's a little involved, so I decided to kind of push back one of your major assignments to next week. But the other things I'd like you to do is to choose an article to critique, and I'll go over that assignment, the article critique, in a minute, and then kind of start planning or outlining your critique. If you're one of those people that procrastinates and might wait till the last minute to do things, I hope that having to choose what article you're going to do and at least read it is going to be helpful for week 3. So just a few things about the discussion board. I really like to use the discussion board as sort of building blocks to the other assignments in our course. So first of all, it's really, really, really important that you do the discussion board. I have found that students who skip the discussion board or don't really give it much thought actually struggle with our major assignments. So first of all, thank you for those of you that did take the time to do it. If you haven't, go back and do the one from week 1, and we'll just get started on a good foot with week 2. So a few reminders. When you include a quote or a reference to a reading in your discussion board, which I require every week, you have to have an in-text citation. So I'm not expecting you to have a references page. What I am expecting you to do is, if you're quoting, that you give the author their last name, the year, and then the page number if it's a written source, or the paragraph number if it's an online source, just to get you in the habit of sort of utilizing sources in the body of your writing. The length, I'd like them to be at least 2 full paragraphs, and make sure that you respond to 2 classmates to get the full points for the post. So your readings this week are going to focus on research methods, which is really how we go about finding sources, how we go about reading them, how we evaluate sources. So your readings are going to focus on the difference between primary and secondary sources, and we are going to be using sources from both those categories throughout our course project. You guys are probably most familiar with secondary sources, so these are sources that are summarizing or sort of synthesizing what's already existing in a research canon, like anything you'd find from database searches, books in the library, comparing any popular sources. Those are considered secondary. Primary sources, on the other hand, are when you as a researcher are actually collecting new information that hasn't been written down and researched before. So we are going to do both of these things over the course of the next 11 weeks now, but for right now we're focusing really on secondary sources, and we'll talk about primary in the weeks to come. But just pay specific attention in your readings this week to how you find sources, what you do once you've found them, and how to kind of evaluate whether it's going to be a good source for you or useful to you. So a couple tips in that regard. I would like you guys to utilize the library databases as much as possible. I am going to ask that you find one popular source for your project whenever we've decided your social issue topics. However, the library databases do also include popular sources. So these include, websites, newspaper articles. Those are considered popular because they are not vetted and gone through the scholarly research process. So when you think of the difference between a scholarly source is one that has been peer reviewed by other scholars and it's gone through an intensive review process, those are what we consider scholarly sources. Popular sources are those that have not gone through that sort of vetting, but they're more accessible to the general public. I'd like you guys to have a mix of both, But if you utilize the library databases primarily, you're going to be finding much better information than if you were just going to start with Google. So my best advice, don't start with Google. You can do both, try the same search in the database as you would in Google or Google Scholar, but just keep in mind that you're going to be finding better information with the databases. And then another thing that your readings focus on this week is how to be mindful of what you search and how. So sometimes I have students that'll put an entire research question in their search on a database, which you don't really want. You don't want to treat databases like Google. I don't know if you've ever pulled up Google and typed in, where's the nearest restaurant to me? And it'll pull up the nearest restaurants, because Google is built to understand sort of an implied search. Whereas databases, when you search databases, less is more. Fewer words, combinations of words. That's what your reading this week is also going to focus on. Try different word combinations. If you're looking for articles on race, for example, and you want to study racism, so try words like discrimination. Try words like racial identity, race. You can try inequality. So terms that may sort of broaden your search, but also just keep in mind that if you're not finding exactly what you're looking for, maybe you can try kind of changing up your terms. So let's talk for a little bit about the next major assignment that you all have. Your library scavenger hunt that was due in week 1 will give me an idea of how comfortable you are using the library databases and sort of introducing you to APA format. And this first major assignment is intended to help you practice those skills. So what you're going to do is find a secondary source about a social issue that you're interested in. We have not gotten in our groups yet, so this may be the issue that you continue with in the course of our project. It may not, but for the purpose of this assignment, that's okay. So find a secondary source. I would prefer that it be a scholarly source. So I'm asking that you turn in that source or a link to it this week so I can look it over and make sure it's a good choice. Your article critique is then going to be 3 pages in APA format that asks you to summarize, evaluate, and analyze that source. So it's just one source, and then you are writing about that source. So it'll start with a summary. In general, what is this source saying to me? The summary, you want to make sure that you keep your opinion out of it. A summary is not subjective, it is objective. It is not about you as a reader, it is about that writer as a researcher. All right, so first tell me what the article is saying, and then in your evaluation section, tell me how you think about it. All right, is this relevant to me in this social issue? Is it useful? And then a couple things you want to think about is also who the author is. Can you find, the person or the organization, and what do you know about them? That can really determine whether the source is useful for you. So a few tips I wanted to give you all as you're kind of starting to think about this assignment is do the reading for week 2 first. There's an article particularly called Reading Games, Strategies for Reading Academic Sources, and it has great advice. If you're sort of intimidated by longer articles, or you're like, oh man, the databases, there's too much, that reading will really help you in analyzing and critiquing whatever you choose. Make sure that you take notes as you're reading the source you've chosen, and try as much as you can to put the source into your own words. This will help you in avoiding plagiarizing. And then I do have a link to a library guide from Cornell University. If you click on the link in your assignment sheet, what you'll see is a website where they sort of break down what you want to think about when you're looking at a source, starting with the author, date of publication, the publisher, and then getting into the content, analyzing the content of it. So this is a really good site if you're like, I'm not really sure how I do a critique. I think that this library guide from Cornell did a great job. And then there's also like a tips page that I think has some good information. So the next piece of our project will be putting everyone into groups, and that's when you guys will really decide what social issue you want to focus on. So this week, the reason we only have a discussion board and then kind of thinking about your critique is so it'll give me time to grade what we have from week 1 and then put you guys in your groups. So looking forward to week 3. We're going to be meeting in your groups for the first time via Teams. And I do require that you guys meet once a week. And that may depend on your schedules. It can change week to week. But hopefully this first week, I can hop into your meetings and make sure everything is going fine. And then next week, your article critique will be due. So I'll post another video at the beginning of next week after I've announced your groups and sort of walk you guys through those next assignments. But if you need anything, if you're confused, if you got questions, email me, send me a chat on Teams. I also accept bird deliveries. If you have pigeons, that works too. So let me know if you have questions, concerns, if you feel like you're falling behind. I am here to help you and guide you. So hopefully I will talk to you guys soon.